Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive?
Always ready.
Great. Today we're looking at how Americans are engaging with sustainability as we head into 2025.
Definitely a hot topic these days.
Yeah, no kidding. Everyone's talking about it. And to guide our deep dive, we're using this really interesting podcast episode called Sustainability in 2025, Engaging Americans for a Greener Future.
Catchy title.
Right. And it's not just a catchy title. Podcast listenership on sustainability is actually booming right now.
For sure. It seems like everyone is becoming more and more interested.
Yeah. And the shift we're seeing is fascinating. It's not just awareness anymore. It's about action.
Definitely. It's not just about knowing about the problems. It's about doing something.
Exactly. So based on that podcast episode, can you paint us a picture of what a sustainable 2025 actually looks like?
Let's see. Well, just imagine zero waste lifestyles becoming like way more mainstream.
Okay, I like where this is going.
Right. So think reusable everything, not just bags and bottles.
Oh yeah, those are already pretty common.
Exactly. But think beyond that. Reusable food containers, even things like cloth diapers making a comeback.
Wow, a blast from the past.
Right, and renewable energy, practically everywhere you look, powering homes and businesses.
That's the dream.
It is. And you know what else the podcast mentioned? There's this really cool initiative called the U.S.-Mexico Border 2025 program.
Whoa, U.S.-Mexico Border 2025. That sounds pretty ambitious. What is that all about?
Oh, it's all about, tackling these big environmental challenges along the border. Air and water quality, stuff like that.
Makes sense. Those issues don't stop at the border.
Exactly. And the coolest thing is it involves all these collaborations between agencies in both countries. They're implementing all these new technologies to, monitor pollution, and they're developing these joint strategies to manage water resources.
Wow. So it really is a cross-border effort.
Absolutely. A perfect example of how, sustainability needs international cooperation.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But, okay, let's bring it back to our listener for a second. We're talking about these big shifts, but what are some things people can actually do in their everyday lives?
The podcast had some really practical advice on that. They laid out these 4 key strategies all about minimizing your environmental footprint.
Love that. Lay it on us.
Okay, so first up, cutting down on single-use plastics.
I feel like we hear this one all the time.
We do, but there was this one statistic in the podcast that really blew my mind. Get this. By 2025, the average American could be using just 1 single-use plastic bag per year.
Wait, 1 bag per year?
Yeah, down from hundreds.
That's wild.
Yeah.
But I guess it shows what's possible, right?
Totally. Okay, strategy number 2, supporting local agriculture.
Love that. I try to hit the farmer's market whenever I can.
It's a great way to go. And it's not just about, that feel-good connection of knowing where your food comes from.
Right, it's about more than just that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really helps cut down on those transportation emissions and boost the local economy, too.
Win-win.
Totally. Okay, third one. This one's a biggie. Being more energy efficient.
Oh, yeah, I've been working on this one myself. Swapping out old light bulbs for LEDs, unplugging things when I'm not using them.
All those little things add up.
They really do.
Yeah, and it might seem small, but it can make a real difference.
Absolutely. What's the last strategy?
Last but not least, transportation. Now, this one can be tricky, I know. It depends a lot on where you live and what's available to you.
Yeah, for sure. But
Yeah.
every bit counts, right?
Exactly. Whether it's carpooling more often, hopping on your bike, or taking public transit.
And it could even be things like combining trips, planning ahead so you're not driving all over the place.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
It's all about being mindful.
So it sounds like it's not just about checking off these actions, but it's really about developing a sense of personal responsibility.
That's what the podcast really emphasized. It's about, feeling more connected to your community and the planet.
Yeah, it's not about being perfect. It's about making conscious choices and making those choices as often as you can.
Yeah. Absolutely. And, to really get everyone on board, we need education, right?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I remember they talked about how important it is to educate young people. Programs like the President's Environmental Youth Awards, I think they mentioned.
Yes, that one's great. It not only recognizes the amazing work young people are already doing, but it also inspires others to get involved.
Right, and I think it can create these ripple effects that last for years.
Totally agree. It gets kids excited about sustainability and gives them the tools to be leaders.
Yeah, speaking of inspiration, I loved what they said about the power of storytelling. They mentioned this other podcast called A Sustainable Mind.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that one.
It shares all these stories about people's personal journeys towards sustainability.
Yeah, those real-life stories can be so powerful.
Totally. It makes it so much more relatable and shows that anyone can make a difference.
I agree. Those stories can inspire people to take action in a way that, facts and figures sometimes can't.
So we've painted this really hopeful picture so far, but we know climate change is this huge ongoing challenge.
Yeah, it's a big one.
What did they say about the future of sustainability in light of that?
Well, they really stressed the importance of constant adaptation and innovation.
Makes sense. It's not like there's just this one and done solution, right?
Exactly. It's about being proactive and constantly evolving our approaches.
Always looking ahead.
Exactly. And, a big part of that is advocating for change on a larger scale.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like pushing for policies that actually support sustainable practices.
Absolutely. They were very clear about that. Investing in renewable energy infrastructure, promoting circular economies.
Even things like putting a price on carbon.
Right, exactly. Those kinds of systemic changes are absolutely essential, in addition to individual actions.
And that brings us back to the power of consumer choices.
Right, absolutely. It's like they say, every time you buy something, you're voting with your dollar.
Right. Choosing to support businesses that make sustainability a priority.
It sends a really powerful message to the market, and it encourages other companies to follow suit.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, it sounds like we've explored what a sustainable 2025 could look like. We've talked about some practical things people can do.
And we've touched on the importance of both individual and collective action.
Exactly. So what's your biggest takeaway?
That's a tough one. But I think for me, the biggest takeaway is that everyone has a role to play in this.
That's a good one.
Yeah, it's about, taking a good hard look at your own habits and making conscious choices wherever you can.
And before we go, we always like to leave our listeners with something to think about. So as you reflect on all this, here's a question for you.
Ooh, I like this part.
As technology continues to advance, do you think it'll help us achieve a more sustainable future? Or will it bring about new challenges?
That's a great question. It really makes you think about the role technology plays in all this.
Yeah, and it's a question with no easy answers, which is why it's such a good one to ponder.
So to all our listeners out there, keep learning, stay curious, and remember, even the smallest actions can have a big impact.
Couldn't have said it better myself. That's it for a deep dive today, folks. We'll see you next time.